Okay, we're going to move right along here. Our next speaker is going to be Tom Rodgers, and he's been working in space communications and payload for many years. He's a physicist and a communications engineer. He was deputy director of the Defense R&D Office. He also headed up the Office of Technology Assessment of Congress, looking at civil space programs. And he's now working with his own foundation. He's president of the Space Transportation Association. He's still very active. He's been very active in communication satellites, remote sensing. So now we're going to hear a little bit about how that was done in the old days, how you used to make it work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Still very active. Reminds me of the first time on a commercial airplane, the stewardess came to me and said, "Sir, I saw a sweatshirt the other day that says 30 stinks." I'm still saying that. Thank you for inviting me here. By the way, I have no slides or photographs. Think radio, not television. I'm very pleased to be in Huntsville. Or let me modify that. I spent a lot of my time in the Space Universe, and it's very nice today not to be where I come from. That's Washington, D.C. Not so much for me, important where I am, is where the hell I am not. I have gotten into some schedule for circumstances, so that I'm going to be giving a paper in Heritage 3 at 11 o'clock. I reached the status about that. And so I'll reach escape velocity and so before that. I somewhat jokingly this morning at breakfast asked where was the session here talking about the present circumstances and future prospects of the Federal Civil Space Program, because that clearly outstanding. I don't think there is such a session, so I don't quite understand what that's good. In thinking about what I might say today, I recall that up to about 10 years ago, I was about as enthusiastic and had my head screwed on clockwise space type as you can find. I'm beginning to get in trouble as Dave mentioned. I was asked to conduct for the Congress a space station study. By the time that was over in 1984, I had certain visceral feelings that we were in some kind of difficulty. By 5 years ago, I was convinced it was terrible. That way of the sense. So I really don't take much fun anymore while thinking about what went on in the past. I have to think about where we are today and where we're going. But I must say I enjoyed the previous talk. Just remember the good old days, but you got to go pretty far back for the good old days. Pretty far back. So I decided to do two things. One, tell you a story that, among other things, is true, relevant, personal, and has a couple of messages in it, and then talk about where we are today and what we might be doing, and where this takes us. I was about 40 years old and had hair back in the year of our Lord 1963, and I found myself on a group advising the then President Science Advisor, Member Jerry Wiesner, on a defense program called Advent. It was the first, by the way, I never had anything to do with the manned space or science or exploration. I was always in the use of space, communications, navigation, position fixing, intelligence, reconnaissance, that sort of thing. And so I wouldn't know a rocket if I fell over it, but by God, I sure needed them. And this is a story about a rocket. And the Advent program was being told about the President's Science Advisor having a few little problems. So we put together a small fleet full of owls, and we did our usual thing, and we came back to his office, and we said, well, Mr. Science Advisor, President, in a way, I suppose you could consider yourself fortunate. I knew some of this, he said, oh, let me sit down. How am I fortunate? Because he said this program is unique. All right, he said, how is the Advent program unique? We said, in our experience, This is the first space program to be screwed up over 4 pi stereos. That it is screwed up no matter how you look at it. A rocket wouldn't work, but that was all right. It didn't have the pizzazz to lift that much weight, but that was all right because the mean time to failure of the communications package was about a month. But that was all right because they were putting television pictures over the goddamn thing instead of crypto voice, which you know. So he threw us out. And a short time thereafter, some of the great men in the city got to Jim Kinney, who was the president of MIT, and I was running the communications division of the Lincoln Laboratory. And probably one of the very last times that I really knew what the hell I was doing, about 1963. You really know what you're doing when you're running about about $20, $30 million. You're running about 100 people, you know, and you're all the time. You really know what the heck what you should be doing about it. And so they said, well, if you're so smart, Rodgers, why don't you come down and fix it? And so I came to Washington for 1 year, and I got the atomic fever, and I never went back. But the story has to do with the building of the first global satellite communication system. I worked very hard with a lot of people that I knew for the first 6 months that I was down there. And the story begins by my being in the office of the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, at the time, and telling him, here's why we need communications. Here's why we need communications of this kind. Here's why we need space to provide communication. Here's why we need these kinds of satellites and why we need them. Well, he was a pretty hard type. And he would bore in for about 3/4 around the time. He said, that's it. I'm convinced. Let's go. Well, happy as a clam. Pulling the ball. By the way, I said, how much is it going to cost? And in today's terms, I said, $500 million. I said, I'm not going to pay that. I'm not going to pay that. What do you want? I said, well, I want it, but I don't want it that bad. That was the end of the meeting. And I went out, and I was talking to Harold Brown, who eventually became, he was the Director of Defense Research and Training at the time. Who eventually became Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Defense. For Christ's sakes, that's too bad. I said, telling me it's too bad. I sold my house. My children are down here. The country needs this. I said, give me a month. I said, give me a month. You owe me a month, for Christ's sakes. So I went back to the Secretary and said, all right, give me a month. Brought in all the fellas, all my colonels, all my admirals, all my colonels. You got a week. Get the course now. Came back in a week later, big briefing charts. The threat! I said, don't tell me what the threat is, show me the last chart. We agree on the last chart, listen to all the others and enjoy ourselves. But if I don't, show me the last chart. They had the price down a full, an amazing, an astonishing 5% said the meeting's over. For everybody that didn't. And finally, General, I thought, General, Chief Prices, we need this program. And I said, you don't have a program. What you have is a desire to have a program, but you do not. We took 3 weeks, went back into the Secretary, and he said, go. In that 3 weeks, we got the cost down by 70%. How do we do it? Some of the things we brought out today, Christenson. I called a general by the name of Blameyer, and I said, tell me about the Titan 3C. He said, well, it's a wonderful rocket. First one after the Atlas. I worked on the Atlas. So I said, well, is this sucker going to work? He said, we're going to build 3. 2 out of 3 going to work. I said, will you stake your reputation on it? He said, yes, sir. United States Air Force. I said, why? What's it going to carry? He said, what do you mean what's it going to carry? You're going to fly 3 rockets. What's it going to carry? I forget what he told me. Water. No. You're going to carry communication satellites. And that's what we did. And we dropped the cost by 70%. I'll never forget McNamara saying to me, you've got $150 million. Paper clips. understood the theory. The first one worked. Then the guy, the engineers, got a hold of it and fixed the shroud. So the shroud didn't work. And the second one. So we had one left. And the Government Operations Committee set up a hearing with one witness, T.F. Rodgers, for the day after the launch. Lit the wick. We got 8 more satellites. So I called up, said, I'm up to the first team tomorrow morning, so we canceled the hearing. That's the way it is. Just it. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is that was one of the last times in my professional life that I ever heard anyone worry about cost. And that's where we are. Worked ourselves off the chart. The second thing is that in those days, at least on the defense side where I was, there were 2 things more important than anything else. One of them was true to some extent on the civil side. One was you didn't have to worry about the bodies were piling up like boards. You were scared. It really wasn't good. Now it's all important. The lessons to take from this is that at the very top, today, never mind yesterday, different universe. The universe we're in today is the universe that goes back to the 40s. I worked in the commercial business side. I was the television receiver design. And everything that was taken for granted there when I was working finally for the Department of Defense was paid no attention. It was irrelevant. But now we're back to where? In the space business, there's going to continue to be a space business, and that is not clear. We're back to where we were in the technology universe, that the computer people have always been in, and the television and the radio people and so on were in way back before 1960. By the way, I'm going to say a few things which, if you said, I said them, I'll probably deny them. Including the following. I was at a meeting that I won't tell you about the specifics, in which Brian Daly had given a talk. Brian Daly at that time was the executive director of the National Space Council. And he was talking about space transportation. And when he was all finished, and he handled himself very well, he was very smart. He had a lot of questions, so I waited for all the questions. He said, I don't know you, you don't know me. But I said, let me describe the space business as I just heard it discussed today, like the space industry. It was an ancient, 500 years before the birth of Christ, the Greek grammatists would describe this as cloud cuckoo land. He said, I'm in the space business. Booming! New technology, new ideas, new goods, new services, investment, going like crazy, growing at 15% per annum. He said, you're in the space business. What is it? Well, satellite communication. So this is a goddamn wake. What he's saying, we need subsidies to call it a level play. We need a lot of money. The government should just do one thing, give us the money, go away. And so on and so forth. He said, gee, we ought to talk a little bit. That's not what. Give it up. Doesn't fit. Governments are good for some things and no good for anything else. And what you're talking about here is no good for. And I did go over to his office and I did talk with him, and I'll just tell you 2 things. One, he asked me why I finally decided to come over and talk to him. And I said 3 reasons, 2 of which are not germane. But the third one, he said, I understand that you are neither a scientist nor an engineer. And he said, well, that's correct. I said, well, let's see more. Because the problems that beset the federal civil space area had nothing to do with field strengths and homes. It had nothing to do with gears and sprockets. It had nothing to do with cathodes. We understand how to put a 632 bolt into a 632 nut. The second thing is that I was ready to sandbag. So I talked about several things. He said, I understand you did the congressional study on the space station. I said, he said, well, you haven't said anything about the space station. I said, well, what's there to say? It's very well known. He said, well, I'd like to hear it from you. I said, okay, assume success. Everybody does their job, they do it well, and sometime after the year 2000, we have it. Success. What do we got? We have 4 people, 2 of them doing useful work. What's the cost? If you advertise the acquisition cost, put it into an annual charge. And don't forget, by the way, put in the interest of the money we borrow, not the way the executive branch runs. Well, it's books, except for the department, right? Read about the deficit. Read about the debt. Never look at the books. So put in for operations, put in for maintenance, and those scientists are going to cost us $3 billion a year each. Is that what the United States of America is aspiring to this space theory? I mean, Jesus wept. So that's where we are. Now, where we are is not very, very pleasant to contemplate. We need to do 2 things. This is my message every place that I go. Since most of the people in the space business are engineers, or think they are, and most of them are not, they're technology developers. I plead with them. I'll come to that second, but I want to refer first to the lessons we learned with Dave Christenson. He didn't list the only one that matters. We have forgotten who the customer is. The customer is not NASA. The customer is not International Rock. The customer is not, the customer is the American public. And I will quote to you from the Wall Street Journal of yesterday. There was an interesting article by a man who wrote a piece entitled Deficit Reduction Made Easy. He was talking about, you have a problem cutting, think about cutting the federal budget. Here's $156 billion. Now here's a list of things. But what does he say in the line about 1/2 the way down? He says, by the way, the background is don't touch defense, don't touch Medicare, don't touch Social Security. Fine, a lot of it. The space program cut it over $6 billion. Parenthesis, the space program, which was once interesting. So all of you as citizens and taxpayers and members of the general public are, from the viewpoint of the Federal Civil Space Program, sort of a problem. We come to you and we tell you what we want to do and how we want to do it. So we ask you for $15 billion, and when you don't give it to us, we're a little bit irritated. Finally, we're incensed, and now we're scared to death. We have forgotten who the customer is. And what we're doing in space just doesn't interest very many people anymore. And it has nothing to do with technology. It has nothing to do with organization. It has nothing to do with staffing. It has nothing to do with anything except we've forgotten who the customer is. When we went to the moon, who gave a goddamn about how the rocks were disposed on the moon or what kind of a rocket we used? We were scared to death about the Soviet Union. And we wanted to show the whole world that we could take them on and equip them. And we did, and we did. With land, with panache, all in public. We knew what we were doing, we knew why, we knew who the customer was. No. So I just leave this with you as citizens and taxpayers and members of the American public. Because you see, you're all here to some extent wearing 2 hats. One is you're trying to do things in space, so wanting to get, but the other hat is the problem. We know how to turn dollar bills into sophisticated art. I mean, my God, Dick Smith, Dave Christenson, used to be Tom Ryan. That's not the problem. Now let me talk to you about the thing that's closest to the hearts of the most supposed to do, and that's the engineering. I'm going to turn on my hat that says Chairman of the Aerospace R&D Policy Committee. About a year and a half ago, realizing that we were in deep yoga, we decided to go back to bare wood and ask ourselves some very fundamental questions. If I live long enough, still I. The IEEE, like any other organization, is got its Byzantine interstices, so we have to get a piece of paper. Paper's been written for about 3 months. I'm going to tell you one of the things it says. But again, as I said it, I must officially, formally deny it. We asked ourselves, why are we in such trouble? And I'm giving you one answer. When the government in other areas, and let me tell you, I was director of research in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I was at OSD, and let me tell you, we never lost sight of the absolute necessity of providing the things to the people that they wanted, which people were the ones who were going to give us the money. But the second thing has to do with technology and engineering and so on. And we stumbled across the obvious. The cost of electricity in space, electricity, $0 is 1,000 times what it is at the Earth's surface. If I get onto the shuttle, go a couple hundred miles up, whip around, come back, and the next week get on a 747 and fly to England and come back, and I compare the cost of going to space relative to flying the Atlantic or the Pacific is 10,000 times more cost. I don't know what's going to come out of Washington, the space station business, but in 1992, if you asked yourself, what is the cost of habitable housing in low Earth orbit compared to nice, new commercial office space in the Earth's surface, it's 100,000 times more per cubic foot. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, simply paralyzes all reasonable, logical thought about whatever the hell you want to do in space, unless you are the friendly federal government and money grows on trees, and it isn't anymore. And so this report that we have coming out, which is entitled, What the United States Must Do to Realize the Economic Promise of Space, is the following. For the next decade, by far, the highest national space priority must be the sharp and early improvement of basic space infrastructure. Its safety and reliability must be increased by 2 orders of magnitude, and the unit cost must be reduced by 2 orders of magnitude. It also goes on and says, I talked to some senior people in the Department of Defense a little while ago because they were picking on me and so on. So if I were back in the 3rd flight, I would make an assertion and ask 2 questions. The assertion is, if I put the whip to the space industry inside of a dozen years, I'll be able to, in terms of what we're doing today, I'll get to space for nothing, at times and places of my own choosing. I'll stay and do whatever the hell I want, and I'll come back when I want for nothing, relative to what I'm paying today. That is, I can imagine space transportation scores down 2 orders of magnitude, which means percents of what we're paying is nothing. Now, if you can get to space, stay there and come down for nothing, ask yourself, what the hell should you be doing in space that you can't do today? And why do I going to change everything I'm now doing in space? That's what we should do. And so the report goes on and says, assume that you can get these costs down and these reliabilities. What would you do? And let me tell you, there are a large number of interesting, gripping, economically attractive things to do in space, but we can't do it because it costs. Well, look, I've enjoyed talking with you, and it is a pleasure to be out of the city of more wisdom and decision. I do want to try to engage your minds and your hearts, as to say, in Huntsville. I don't care what the hell anybody else in Marshall is thinking about, it doesn't count. Unless it has to do with driving down the unit cost of basic space infrastructure. I said unit cost, dollars per pound, dollars per trip, dollars per person, dollars per kilowatt. I'm not talking about the total cost, because when those unit costs come down, there will be people by the thousands or the tens of thousands in this country that don't know space from the hump on a camel's back. Who will start saying, hey, I could go to space and do this, or I could see space do that, and then we'll begin to merge. My last observation is that I went to a going away party with Jack Gibbons. Jack ran OTA when I did the space station. We stay very close, not all of a sudden the president signs it. I was talking with him at the very end. I said, well, Tom, you haven't said anything about space. Anything about space? I said, brace yourself. What? I said, I'm getting to be bullish. You? Bullish in space? Darth Vader? Federal program. He said, why? I said, well, you know, 2 reasons. I said, the most important reason, by far, is the following. Anybody that has any thoughtful relevance, reference, interest, connection with this federal program now knows that it's all wrapped around the axle. And they're all, to some extent or another, scale. Therefore, Jack, we have begun to put into place the necessary conditions for the making of the fundamental changes that we have to make. So I'm beginning to get bullish. So again, I'm a little bit ahead of the power curve, like 2 or 3 years. But thank you all very much.
Before we let Tom get away, we'll be leaving, giving out the paper. Would there be any questions you would like to ask him? He won't be on our panel. Yes, I think we have a Would you read it out? Sure. Okay.
By the way, this is the conference. We'll be here till tomorrow afternoon sometime. Any of you, anytime, so we walk around and grab it. So I don't get any sing or say anything like that. Yeah, sure.
Yes. One thing that they is not moving or fighting in popular one or prevented in its marketing concept. For example, there are some very interesting surface formation of Mars. Something that
Excuse me, you're talking to the wrong man. We're not going to go to Mars as far as I can see.
okay. I'm very interesting things go. So interesting go. When you want to fight it. Or you want to fight it to gain the public interest and
We're going to Mars?
yeah, prevent the public interest.
How can you get public interest?
Hey, let me tell you a story. Please. God, you're nice people. Boy, Tom Paine was an old friend. He called me over when he got the final or near final draft of the National Commission on Space Report. He said, he called about 4 or 5 of us, Dan, and I went and I said, well, there are 2 categories, 5 observations in category 1, 1 in category 2. Category 2 is, please, Tom, do not ask the American public for $400 billion to go to Mars. And he said, thank you very much. Why do you say that? Because I say if you do, that report will be shaped into a cylinder and put into a circular file. He said, thank you, I appreciate it. And he asked for $400 billion to get it. I remember talking with, by the way, okay, let's assume the room is just got me. I talked with Sally Ride. She came down to the report of Morris. Remember? And she asked me, would I take a look at it? I said, well, I don't know. Let me ask you 2 questions. And then we'll see. First question I said, who have you talked to about putting this report? Oh, she talked all people like all scientists. Okay, that's well, something. I said, the second question is the problem spending the money or getting the money? Oh, she says, it's getting the money. Well, I said, you talk to the wrong people. You don't know how to spend it. By the way, the staff of people, please don't ask for $500 million. And they convinced President Bush to go out, and say, I want the American people. And he needed $500 billion, and the Congress, in a fit of almost frenzy, gave him $5 million. At that rate, I calculated how many thousand years. And the next year, he got nothing. And they closed down Ramon Mara's office, and so on and so forth. Let me say one thing here that I'm going to say over the other meeting about you people. You're the soul of the earth. People in the space business, the engineers, educated, smart, hardworking, honest, responsible. You can't get it, You can't get a better group of people, one at a time. But as a group, they do the dumbest. And I found out why this is so, None of these people ever listen to the radio. They never watch television. They never read the newspapers. They never talk to people who are non-space universe. And so they come up with things which in their club, in their very high Q hothouse, makes extremely good sense. And the whole rest of the country looks and says, well, yeah, you got him. Why? Any other questions? Yeah.
Has the unit cost to space always increased or always decreased at a certain time?
Well, I don't know. It's just very, very high. Nobody cares. I was at a meeting not so long ago on rocket engines. And when somebody started talking about getting the cost down, he said, I never heard this ever said in my profession. It was always get the performance up. We want the performance up. We can get the LEO. We can get the I. We know how to do it. We've known how to do it for years. It's never been in the interest of anybody. Look, if I say much more, I'm going to give you the 50,000 word speech. But I just point out one thing. You compare the government universe and the federal program compared to everything else. In the space industries, research and development is a profit center. Every place else, it's a cost of doing business. And you pay that cost because you make your profit on building things or delivering services. If you're going to make your money on research, well, then the research gets to be very sophisticated. It takes a very long time and costs a lot of money. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. People are not penal. We just got ourselves all wrapped around here. You know how I get even the costs down. And if it becomes important to Marshall, they'll do it. It's not important.
How do you get that policy permeating through NASA and down to the ground?
Fairly interesting question. You got it all backwards. In the Soviet Union, or years ago in the Santo Domingo Republic, when the great man got on television and said, the policy is, that was it. We're in the United States of America. Policy follows events in the United States. Policy doesn't lead events. Bush says, I want to go to Mars. Not dead. Don't talk about Washington. Nobody in Washington's got a goddamn clue about what to do. You're the guy. You're the man. You got to figure out what to do and how to do it. And talk to your friends and talk to your neighbors and talk to your bosses and talk to your representatives and talk to your senators. They don't have a clue. And by the way, we've been at this since 1940. We won a world war. We won a Cold War. And nobody ever had to think about either one or the other of two things. One, costs. 4 markets. We delivered everything to Maryland Avenue Southwest of the Puzzle Palace. And now we have to understand about costs and markets. Don't go to Washington. Who the hell in Washington knows? How many people in Washington ever met a payroll? In the space area, I mean. Sorry, but it's, look, if we're in Devitt Ridge, you're in deep trouble here. But there's nobody here but us chickens, boys. Nobody. And it's our asses that are on the line. You know? So when I go on, I'm wearing the hat of the chairman of the Aerospace R&D Policy Committee, the IEEE. There's one thing I say to every engineer, particularly if they're working on a space station. You work 60 hours a week. You work 40 hours because that's what you get paid for at Rockwell or Boeing or whatever. And the other 20 hours a week you work your duck off trying to figure out what the hell we should be doing and how to do it, how to get there. Because there's no sense going, gee, please, I'm watching. Oh, it's good to get out. Yeah.
That report you mentioned, how do I get a copy of it?
I'll give you an